What if I told you the Saudi Pro League, or what we popularly call as the Saudi Football League, the whole story isn't really about money. It's about time. It's about how long the attention of viewers last, how long the ambition stays sharp, and how long a league can move faster than the football culture actually allows. Look, the big news is Cristiano Ronaldo is on a strike. He's not playing for his club Al Nassr. And the obvious thing was when Cristiano Ronaldo left Manchester United, he said, I am not going to Saudi to retire. And he's not frustrated because the project failed. He's frustrated because it stopped accelerating at the pace which he is used to. So today, we are not asking whether Saudi football is good or bad or what do you think of the players. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to ask a harder question. Is this the beginning of something sustainable, or is it the exact moment in history that starts repeating itself? Let me try and understand and try to explain you what I'm trying to talk about. In January 2023, something unusual happened in the world of football. A 37-year-old, fresh of the most turbulent exit of his career, didn't go back to Europe, didn't take the Hollywood route, didn't fade quietly. He went to Saudi Arabia, and overnight, football changed its tone. Not because of goals, not because of trophies, but because power entered the game openly. Look, long before Cristiano Ronaldo, there has been multiple players who've moved to Saudi, but Saudi league wasn't that popular. And this video isn't about one particular player. This is a story about a league that tried to buy time with the biggest name and about a player who refuses to waste his own time. So, if I think about it, why didn't Saudi tiptoe their announcement? See, Saudi football didn't arrive cautiously or how the Chinese league had arrived. It didn't test the waters, it didn't build quietly, it arrived at a very decisive moment in the world of football. If you think about it, a lot of fans were frustrated with the whole idea of Super League. And that was just not a football decision. It was a national decision by many countries because there was a lot of centralized ownership. And then Saudi entered the picture. Saudi said, let's take it a notch up because now we will make it a national decision. There will be centralized ownership and there will be state backing. A handful of clubs position themselves as global ambassadors in football world. Over roughly 5 years, Saudi clubs have spent well over €1 billion across transfers, wages, and incentives. If you look at the number here, which is by comparison of Ronaldo's salary, Ronaldo earns 180 million euros a year compared to the top EPL earner, which is around 26 million. 24 million is the top La Liga earner, and 22 million is the top Serie A earner. Now, this is not about the total spent on Ronaldo itself. Now, just look at the Saudi Pro League's transfer spend as a trend. Here is the most important part which people fail to understand. This is not some reckless spending. This was designed spending. Stars were brought in for attention, prime age players for credibility, squad players for stability. This wasn't a league which was chasing trophies or chasing for their Champions League qualification in 5 years' time. This was a league chasing relevance amongst the European leagues, and they were chasing fast. Because remember, money doesn't buy legacy, money buys you time. I'll give you a classic example: Manchester City, Chelsea, Man United to a certain extent. They all spent big, not because they were trying to chase the big legacy of trophies. They were trying to buy time so that they can chase the legacy. But that's not actually the true part of it. If I further drill down the numbers of the entire Saudi league, it actually becomes even more shocking because the wages which Saudi league offer are enormous. No one in Europe can offer that kind of wages. The contracts broke ceilings. But the real story wasn't how much was spent, it was compressed spending of the ability of the league because there were short bursts, aggressive window, front loaded contracts, and that tells you something very important about the football world. Saudi football wasn't planning for eternity, it was planning for impact. The World Cup came at the right time for them. And attention now, eyes now, conversation about us right now. Because attention doesn't compound to football culture, and it rarely does because it peaks and then it demands answers. Now, this is where the most interesting part actually gets to. Did the league actually improve? That's for the time to sell. Let's actually kill the lazy narrative. Did football in Saudi improve? Yes, clearly. Attendance went up, broadcast went up. Each and every broadcaster started earning at least 10 times by just telecasting one match a week. Continental performances improved, the tactical levels rose because big managers moved there. Here is a line which matters the most: the league actually improved, but the culture didn't globalize. Fans followed players, not clubs. Highlights traveled, rivalries didn't. You would never find a rivalry like a Barcelona and Real Madrid, nor will you find a rivalry like Celtic and Rangers. Forget about Manchester United versus Liverpool or Manchester United versus Man City, because Saudi football grew outwards, not downwards. And that difference decides whether a league stabilizes or it stalls. Now, when I think about the transfer spend in Saudi League, if you look at 2023 year itself, they spent close to €1 billion. Now, that's not something which is unheard of. There are a lot of players or a lot of clubs which spend that kind of money. But that 1 billion amount, if you think about it, Chelsea spent in 3-4 windows, and Saudi League spent in just 1.5 windows. If what makes matters worse is that there are a lot of players in Saudi who have played, earned the money, and left. But we'll come about that in some time. Now, another interesting aspect which I have always wanted to share about the Saudi League is the net spend. In Premier League, just in the summer of 2023, the net spend was 1.28 billion. Now, what does net spend basically mean? For anyone who's new, it's basically what is the amount you buy a player, what is the amount you sell a player, what is the difference between both. Let's assume it as profit. So in 2023, 1.28 billion was the Premier League's net spend, which is way higher than any other league. But there is a small difference. Look at the number of players who have left. Approximately close to, okay, this is close to, this is not the exact figure because Premier League wouldn't release it, because there are a lot of players who move to lower leagues as well, right? And the FA doesn't capture all of that information, and there are some undisclosed uh, information as well. So it's 1.28 billion for over 70 players which left across the window. Now, the big question: why does Ronaldo matter more than anyone else? This is where the story sharpens slightly. Because Cristiano Ronaldo wasn't just a signing, he was a validation. He was he was not actually brought in to score a lot of goals. Look, Ronaldo can say any statement saying that I want to score 1,000 goals and 5,000 goals and 10,000 goals. But he was actually brought in to answer one simple question: is this a serious football league? For a while, the answer was yes. Because the moment Ronaldo comes into your league, there are three things which happen. The sponsors follow you, a lot of players look at you and follow you, global media follows you for fun. But Ronaldo is not just a simple, he is not just a simple human being. He is not just a symbol in football either. He is a fierce competitor, and competitions don't tolerate ambiguity. Gradually, reports started emerging: uneven squad investment, strategic priority shifting mid season, commercial logic overriding football logic. You've heard this story before for a club called as Manchester United. Because Ronaldo didn't come to Saudi Arabia to wind down. He came to win here in a very controlled environment. And slowly but steadily, that environment stopped growing. That environment stopped feeling control. But here is the uncomfortable truth: Ronaldo isn't frustrated because Saudi football failed. He is frustrated because it lost its speed and urgency to grow. Because for elite competitions and competitors, stagnations feel worse than failure. Remember, if you fail, you can always succeed by trying hard. But if you perform at your peak, so-called peak at this age, this is the level you hit, and you keep hitting it every year, but you don't see a bar higher than that. That's where people like Ronaldo get frustrated. Now, this is the quiet exit which nobody actually talks about, and this is something which I have been tracking for quite some time. A lot of players have moved Saudi. If I ask you a simple question, do you remember how many players moved to Saudi? You will say probably not. But I'll ask you another question. Of all the players who moved to Saudi, how many of them left within the first 12 months or 24 months? Because when the players were leaving, they weren't leaving loudly or dramatically. but they were leaving very steadily. Over the last 24 months, a dozen of foreigners have already left the Saudi league. All right. Now, this is not even funny. If I actually show you the actual numbers here, so from the last 22 months, from the 24 months, 365 players have moved into the Saudi league. Of the 365 players, close to 348 players who have played for more than 24 months in Saudi league have departed, because when the contracts were renegotiated, they quietly terminated. I'll give an example of John Duran. John Duran was Premier League's most exciting talent to a certain extent. Aston Villa sold him for 70 odd million to Saudi League. He played in Saudi League for less than a year, moved to Fenerbahce. Now, Fenerbahce are looking to terminate his contract because he's got some weird demands about it. Now, that is not to say that is the benchmark of Saudi League, but this number clearly shows you one thing, that peak age players moved there for 1 year of quick money, but they are looking elsewhere for competition. And when I was actually trying to think, what is that destination which keeps coming into everyone's mind? And the answer is Turkey. All right. And if I think about why, it's very simple, because Turkey is close to Europe. It offers slightly pressure compared to other leagues in the world. It's closer to European pathways. And most importantly, the relevance is slightly up without giving up your strong wages. Because remember, Turkish football still offers you good amount of wages. Ask Andre Onana. His contract is being paid by more than 70% by the club. And this wasn't an exodus, it was a market correction. And correction tells you something crucial. The whole Saudi project didn't collapse, it just normalized. Look, every league goes through ups and downs, because if you think about it, the Premier League in the 90s was only average. Then came the early 2000s with the money from Sky and the whole Rupert Murdoch deal. Premier League's money skyrocketed. Then came another lull period. But post 2018 2019, when the television rights even got normalized, the amount in money in Premier League just became too much. For example, can you imagine a club like Brentford or Bournemouth going out and spending 200 odd million in a window? They can do that if they finish to a certain extent. And I was thinking about this in parallels with other leagues which has happened. One of the leagues which came in my head was the Saudi league, okay, with Chinese league, because every boom invites comparison. And inevitably, the question comes, is this the next China? If you remember, there was a period in time in football where all the top football players left and wanted to play in China. The Oscars of the world, the Hulk of the world, so on and so forth. So let me rephrase the question. Is this the next Chinese league? The honest answer is no, but also not never. Because if you think about it, the Chinese league collapsed because private debt exploded. There was no grassroots integration, there was no patience. And Saudi's football is slightly different because there is state backing. They have more money than China, long term intent, cultural connection to the sport amongst the people. Because if you think about it, in Saudi Arabia, one of the most highly spoken languages is Arabic, and Arabic is spoken across multiple countries in Middle East. So there is still a strong connection of the sport. I will just give you a simple example. I recently had someone at my home who's from Egypt, and I asked him, "Do you think Mo Salah is the most famous Egyptian footballer?" He looked at me and he laughed. He said, "In Egypt, people come for two things, Prashant. The first thing is they come for the pyramids, and the second question they ask is, where does Mo Salah live?" But here's where the comparison still matters, because if you think about it, both leagues, right? When I look at the spend, which is the Saudi versus China book comparison, both leagues reached the same moment when the attention slowed. Then the structure had to take over. China didn't have structure. Saudi's football still has a lot of structure, and it can actually impose this final structure where it becomes slightly more competitive, and also the league can grow to a certain extent. Remember, football in Saudi is no longer in its boom phase. That is over. What comes back next is even harder, because it can remain like a destination league, a league like an Indian league where a lot of ex footballers come and play in for a year or two and they go, where people basically come for decent amount of security in terms of the money what they earn in Saudi because it's tax free. Or it can become a league of system with identity, continuity, and football logic. And this is why Cristiano Ronaldo to that league matters, because his frustration isn't rebellion, it's a signal. And like I said, money buys you attention, money buys you time, But football only respects structure. Football only respects value in a league. So Saudi football didn't fail. It arrived early. Now, the real question now isn't whether the Saudi league will survive if Cristiano Ronaldo goes. What about the global attention? Is he going to MLS? So on and so forth. But the real question is, can Saudi football actually evolve from here? Because the leagues that lost aren't the ones that shout the loudest, they are the ones that learn the fastest. Now, last but not the least, I don't know what will happen to Cristiano Ronaldo or his tenure at Al Nassr or whichever club he plays for. But there's a small indication right now that a lot of clubs in Saudi are looking to sell their most prized assets to Europe, trying to get whatever money they can. And before I complete this video, let me try and tell you one more thing. I don't know about what is going to happen with the future of Saudi League. I am not a Nostradamus. But I can tell you one thing very surely. A lot of footballers who are thinking right now that, you know what, I think my tenure in La Liga is done, my tenure in Premier League is done, Syria is done. They're not looking at Saudi. Because remember, when Cristiano Ronaldo leaves, a lot of attention does leave with him. If you like such content and if you want to see more data driven content, kindly like, share, and subscribe and share the YouTube video with anyone who's got interest in such insights. I'll be more than happy to cover it. And you can drop in your comments where you can say what is the next topic you want me to cover. Thank you so much.